that's funny. I just got a notification that Talk Heathen is starting live. We should tune into that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Who wants to watch that?
I don't know. But I say we race home and get there.
Yeah, okay.
Here, sketch.
I think my skin looks a little darker than normal.
Yeah, did you change your hair?
Yeah.
That's a funny look you got going there, Dan.
Yeah, I don't know.
Hello and welcome to Talk Heathen. We've got our live studio audience. I've got a guest today, and I'm feeling great. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great. This seat's a little warm. I think Eric's been in it too long, so I had to...
Yeah, that's definitely the chair that Eric sits in, and we definitely swap them when we're
Yeah, that's what it is, for sure. Yeah.
It is June 9th. We've got a couple of quick announcements, mostly that they're local. So throughout the week, we're doing some beautification and lawn changes, and we need as many hands as we can get because we got to dig the first 2 inches off the front of the lawn. And then on Friday and Saturday, we've got some lava rock moving to do. If you want to be a part of making this beautiful, glorious community even more glorious and even more beautiful, you should come on by. And if you don't, you should come on by anyway, because this is a cool place to be.
We'll lava you for it, and you'll rock because of it. That's a twofer.
Yeah, now I know how Eric feels
Well,
when I do that.
That's why I don't host this show. So
No, it's a Jamie episode, so we're gonna get as many puns as we can.
Jamie and Dan.
Jamie and Dan, yeah, it's a Jamie and Dan episode. Sorry, I almost forgot you were there. It's fine. Okay. It's a Jamie and Dan episode, so we're gonna get some good puns and some tall jokes in probably, and some other stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. You got anything going on that you wanted to announce before we get into calls?
I mean, in case you don't know who I am, I'm Objectively Dan. I host Truth Wanted on Friday nights here at the ACA studios. Kind of similar to Talk Heathen. We do calls as well, but we kind of go a little more broad. I mean, a few weeks ago we were talking about Bigfoot. Last week we talked about crop circles. I mean, we get all kinds of stuff, and we get guest hosts every single week. So if you're into the atheist YouTube people, if you like Shannon Q, Apologia, like Genetically Modified Skeptic, all those guys have been on there, and we always get new people every week. So definitely go check that out. That's Friday nights at 7 o'clock Central. And this guy's made an appearance on there, too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been fun.
And I haven't been back, but that's fine. It's whatever.
Well, not yet.
Yeah, okay, cool. I guess that ruins my joke of, he's got a different host every week. It has nothing to do with commitment by him or them, so it's fine.
Okay.
All right, let's get into...
do you know how to do this, Jamie? Do you press the buttons there?
Yes, I know.
Okay.
I was deciding.
All right, just making sure.
Let's see. Let's get Mark in Mississippi. How you doing this week?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
What's up, Mark?
Yeah. You're on with Jamie and Dan, and it says you're a repeat caller about intelligent design. So would you like to...
I called on Mother's Day, and we had a good talk, and I was invited to call back and spent a lot of time thinking about it, and I'm going through all your shows and listening to all the things you have to say and trying not to be redundant. I think you've handled a lot of the arguments well, and I don't want to go down the same rabbit hole.
Thank you. Like and subscribe.
And I have liked and subscribed, and there's a reason I really like your show. Even though I come down on the side of theist, I'm an open-minded theist, and I like to have these discussions. And as you know, you can't express any kind of doubt in the church conversation. You have to be, you have to come down solidly, usually to be accepted on the young earth creationist side of things, and they can't do that. I'll talk about my thoughts and on the theist, but if you want to express any thought, like I mentioned last time, I don't believe in biblical inerrancy, so I'm not going to argue for the flood and all that. So I'm very open-minded. Ultimately, I'm searching for the truth, and when I went back and read through the comments, I thought the atheist community that was commenting, they were very supportive. I was very appreciative of that. So, having said all that, I've been doing some research on the flagella, which, as you know, is a hot topic with irreducible complexity and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And,
I think I've usually heard it described to, prove that DNA is too complicated and evolution can't be accurate because. Yeah, are you familiar with that?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like it's one of those things where people cite as like
wiggly bit.
the complexity and its functions wouldn't make sense from an evolutionary perspective to develop the way that it has, and that's the
To be
argument.
clear, people that are not evolutionary biologists say that.
Yes, well, yes, that's the talking point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mark, for our audience, why don't you fill them in on the flagellum, or at least an approach to your argument via flagellum, and what that is all about?
Well, I'm not real caught up on irreducible complexity per se, because I've been researching, what the science is on it and the many parts that play a role in it. So I could see the argument against that. But still, and there's all different kinds of flagella in prokaryotes. And so I've been looking at that, and I've been watching the video series of how creationism taught me real science. Are you familiar with it?
I am not, but it sounds like something that I should be familiar with.
Not sure I'm familiar with it either.
Yeah.
Really? In my research, watching some stuff on YouTube, I was referred to that. And it's a good series. He researches a lot of topics and tries to tie it in a scientific explanation. Like I just watched one earlier today on the mitochondrial Eve and that subject, and he addresses a lot of interesting subjects. So I recommend it. I think it's more from a scientific viewpoint than a creationist viewpoint. But what I'm seeing is, in my review of literature, and I really just started looking at this week, and you may have some other references or recommendations for me to study this. But he goes through, this is how you get a flagella, and you start with the type 3 secretory system, and, just add this protein. He adds about 15 proteins to it, and he's like, voila, now you have a flagellum. And I'm kind of like, I haven't seen an evolutionary, say, a mutational explanation for that. What I'm seeing is we're going from A to Z, but I'm not seeing how a mutation causes that, how natural selection affects that change. And what a lot of literature is saying is we will at some point in time be able to explain this, but we can't now. And to me, what I'm saying is there's still a faith component in the science that says this is natural selection, and I'm seeing creation in this.
Well, before we start with this, Mark, let me first say, I'm glad, going back to what you previously said, that you're able to find other people, other atheists and stuff, who are kind of open-minded to what you have to say. I think that's really good. I never grew up as a young earth creationist. I grew up kind of quasi-Methodist, but I agree with you with your comments as far as like it's hard in like a particular church setting to kind of have these kinds of conversations. When you're going to church, you're expecting other people to kind of think the way you do and stuff, and like pushing boundaries there isn't exactly as safe as it is it is online, where people kind of have these discussions and stuff. So first, I just want to commend you for having conversations with people about this stuff. The other thing I'd say is, we use the word faith in a lot of different ways, and an implicit trust in something is kind of what I'm getting at here, in the sense of like, we trust that we will have an explanation for this in the future. And like, you're right, like there is some sort of trust in something that is actually like currently unknowable, right? Like I don't know for sure that we'll ever have an evolutionary explanation for that as well. But I think when we have these kinds of conversations, we also have to think about how evolution has explained so much of the world that we already have come to know, and how it seems to fit a lot of the evidence that we've found. Whereas, I mean, if we're talking about a creationist perspective, from what I've seen, you can easily do the same thing with a lot of things that don't make as much sense. I'm trying to think of some, like, the appendix, for example. I mean, some people have found some, like, explanations for the appendixes there. I had mine removed when I was a kid, and I always make the joke to people like, well, if it was designed there, I mean, either I did something wrong to it or God did something wrong to it because it had to get taken out, and God didn't pay for my health insurance. So, like something went wrong there. But, like I see what you're getting at, where there's a kind of frustration as far as like, oh, well, they always say that evolution is the answer. And my response to that initially is, yeah, because I mean, usually it kind of is. Usually we've been able to find explanations for like just a variety of different problems over the years. And I wouldn't be surprised to find that evolution would be an explanation for it. Again, I don't know enough about that particular subject to say one way or the other, but that's my take. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, so my response would start with, when you say that there's an element of faith in the science, I'd ask you to clarify what you mean by faith.
Well, there's a belief in things that are not yet proven, but may become proven. Very similar to what Dan just said.
So
you haven't proven that part of it.
Well, I know that I haven't. I'm less familiar with where the science is as far as concluding, but the thing that I would describe now is that belief is not binary at all, particularly in science. It has various degrees of confidence, and in science, science done properly handles that very, very, very well. And in layman's terms or lay people's terms, women can be lay people as well. It's 2019. Not all women are experts in things.
Okay, we get it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, hey, hashtag feminism. All right. Back off.
You good?
Son. But in layman's terms, people believing something usually describes a level of confidence that you wouldn't have in science. So, for example, when you talk about the appendix, there's actually a relatively good understanding of how things develop, and something being having an evolutionary history that we do understand doesn't necessarily mean that it is beneficial, right? So we think about evolution selecting for what is, selecting for things through sexual selection or natural selection or survival, that kind of thing, but it doesn't always yield the best results, right? Like there's whatever the name of that nerve is in a giraffe's neck that starts at the back of the top of the neck, goes all the way down, and then all the way back up to the front of the back of the neck, up to a place that's like less than 3 inches away.
Recurrent laryngeal nerve. I think it's the recurrent laryngeal nerve.
I was less familiar with the name. So when you say that there's a belief in things not yet in evidence, I have a hard time believing that the current scientific consensus is a confident assertion that, X is true despite not having evidence, right? Like there are things that are commonly believed to, the science is settled on this. For example, things that prompted the extinction of the dinosaurs. It's commonly believed that, there's a broad consensus on it, that question is answered. And there are parts of that question that are open still. Right. So when you start talking about, there's a faith in the science, I don't see it.
Well, what I see in a lot of the videos that I watch is that subject kind of is glossed over. Natural selection did this, and then we got all these steps, and thus we have evolution. And where I'm coming at it from is I can see the transitional forms. There's clear evidence of that. And where I'm arguing is that I think, instead of this being from random mutation, I think we don't get these new traits without a creator. That's where I see the creator.
So there's
modifications of these traits.
Do you think random mutations ever happen at all in nature?
Absolutely, they do. And when we see them, we tend to see them acting on existing traits. I'm not aware of any evidence of new traits coming out from these mutations.
Okay.
And if you know that, I'm more than willing to research that and look that up.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, and then I'll let Jamie ask what he wants to ask, is if you know for a fact that random mutations do happen, and if you also know that, but some of these are also designed, what's your criteria for telling the difference between the two?
I think if I could see a mutation and all of a sudden you have something new, like the flagella, I think is an excellent area to study because it's a fairly primitive trait, and it's easy to study bacteria. That would be a good thing. If I saw, for example, if you had some bacteria that do not have flagella and you put them, in a substance and they evolve flagella de novo, I would find that very, very convincing if you can show that happened, if that's purely from mutation.
So it sounds like to me that you're saying that beneficial mutations necessarily have to be designed mutations.
Well, that's where I'm leaning. That I don't see how you can mutate your way into a fully functioning eye. I've seen, the explanations of how the eye evolves and where the eye starts, but I want to see more of the process through pure random mutation as opposed to theistic designed mutation.
So when you say theistic design mutation, I have a almost entirely complete problem with that as a concept that's being discussed, because at a fundamental level I think it's flawed. But in terms of what you're talking about, understanding the process of evolution as far as specific organs like the eye coming about, that's an entire field of evolutionary biology, is the study of eyes and things like that. And so if as you're saying, you've heard the explanation, I don't understand how you can come to a conclusion that there isn't an explanation, right? Like I don't know where you've looked for your explanation or what you've found, but it's relatively conclusive, at least as far as the human eye, the steps through which it went, right? Photosensitive cells, a greater number, starting to get concave until you get to a pinhole camera, right? Like the problem I think with some of these explanations, particularly the ones that are designed at kids, is they don't emphasize how long every single part of that takes, which is not just millions of years, but tens of millions, and in most cases hundreds of millions of years for things like that. So it's not, and when they show diagrams to kids or they're trying to explain it for all of us lay people, they tend to show like a single individual creature evolving through, but really they should show a representation of probably 100,000 creatures, some of which get some of the beneficial mutation, and most of them die. And the ones that don't have it die at a greater rate. So
right.
there's parts of this that when it's explained become kind of, well, it doesn't would give someone the impression of, well, that seems convenient. But no, I mean, where are you as far as your understanding of how, for example, something like the eye would develop, keeping in mind that I don't know the stages of the evolution of even the human eye, but mostly I'm asking about the concept.
Right. The guy who produced the video, How Creationism Taught Me Science, actually the preceding video to his on the flagella is about evolution of the eye. So I just watched that recently, and he does a good job of explaining exactly what you were referring to.
Right. Do you watch any videos not produced by creationists?
I don't watch any creationist videos. I don't think they're very scientific. So I tend to I've watched
we
lots
agree
of
with you.
Ra.
Yeah. So then let me clarify. This person that said that creationism taught me science. What is their take on evolution?
I think it's not real clear to me. I don't want to misquote him, but my impression is that he is not a creationist, but he probably was raised to be one and has since looked at the science. So he does not come down on the side of creation. This is not a creationist-sponsored video series. It's more, I think he's more atheistic or agnostic, but he hasn't made that clear to me. But he tends to come down on the side of evolutionary thought and evolutionary thinking.
That's probably
so
good.
I think you would like the videos.
Cool.
Yeah. Throw a link in the YouTube comments, and when I go back and watch the video and read the comments, I'll be able to find that link. I've just remembered a resource that I can recommend to you that I think would be helpful, depending on how much you enjoy or have time to read entire books. But the book, Why I Believed, which is by, I forget the author's name, basically chronicles the author's process through basically shift from being a creationist to being a less fundamentalist Christian, and why he began to doubt and ultimately not believe that creationism explained the diversity of life on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, that would be worth one. Now, keep in mind, I don't know if you remember this from last time, that I started out, very conservative Christian, as many of you listeners have. But I went a long time without even going to church or doing anything. I went about 17 years, didn't go to church, quit. And I was still I was still more of a theist. I just felt like I couldn't go. I was going to go to hell anyway, so I might as well enjoy life. And actually, I used to be a practicing medical doctor. And because I was leading the atheist lifestyle, more hedonistic, and I used to jokingly say that I wouldn't belong to a church that would have me as a member because I felt I couldn't live up to those requirements. So I tended to be more involved with atheist community and atheist type activities. But I kind of came back. But I was selectively prosecuted. I was treating pain, and I got shut down by the DEA and had to find a new career. But my partner, who was not as outspokenly non-Christian, he wasn't prosecuted at all. So part of me feels like I was prosecuted because of my open-mindedness and my non-Christian values.
Well, I can't speak to the bias of any DA, presumably in the state of Mississippi. But in terms of talking about, you called in the notes here is to talk about intelligent design. Other than not seeing how the grander process of evolution by natural selection can explain the diversity of life on Earth, in particular, the development of evolutionary traits, as you phrased it, or new genetic code, I think is probably to the point. Other than that, is there something that leads you to believe that intelligent design is an explanation?
I think ultimately it comes down, I see DNA as a code, and I would say that I can't see how a series of random errors could get us from a one-celled organism to the complex eukaryotic organisms we are now.
Okay, but can you see how evolution would?
I can see evolution, I can see the process, and I can see evolution working with the creator behind it.
Well, but you can't.
That's where I'm at now in my research.
Okay, because you've said random mutations and random chance a few times. Hopefully there's an understanding that doesn't describe evolution.
How would you describe it differently than random chance?
Evolution is scientifically is defined as the change in allele frequency over time, but the process that led to the diversity of life on Earth is evolution by natural selection. So it's not just things randomly changed. I rolled the dice, all of them again and again until I got Yahtzee. It's I rolled the dice, and the ones that were high numbers or sixes I kept, or at least they were not naturally selected out of the process, and the other ones got re-rolled effectively. Or at least they didn't show up in the next generation.
I would add, there is an environment that is putting pressures into the system for allele frequencies to change in one way or another. Animals that live in colder climates, the ones that survive in those climates, are going to have the frequency changes towards being able to live in those environments better over periods of time, right? That's just a little example, but we see this all the time. There are blind fish, for example, like fish who live in caves that don't need their eyes anymore because they've changed. Their environment has caused them to lose their sight. There's lots and lots of examples you can find in this, and in our fossil record as well, of animals who are found in these environments, like in Texas, for example. In the central Texas area, you can go to the mammoth site where you can actually find mammoths and even camels. Like camels used to live here as well. It doesn't make sense for mammoths and camels to really live in the environment here now, but the environment has changed, and those animals were living here when the environment was different. And the world is changing all the time with new environments, and the animals are kind of changing with it. And evolution is kind of explaining why this is happening, how this is happening, right?
Right, and I agree with natural selection selects traits. I don't see how natural selection causes traits to originate that can be selected. That seems to arise from mutation, and I don't think mutation is adequate. Now, I'm open-minded about this. People may post some stuff right now while they're watching, and I'll research all that. I'm not just being dogmatic.
Yeah. So you've highlighted one of the things that doesn't. That, if I were trying to create a system that would lead to life on Earth, it's interesting because the evolutionary process doesn't as frequently create new traits like you're talking about, or at least, and oftentimes entire species die out. 99 point whatever % of all species that have ever lived on Earth are dead. And in large part, that's because natural selection found the entire selection wanting, and now they're gone.
I think what Mark is talking about is the criticism I've actually heard of evolution before. It's this idea that, so you can see the mutations are there, but how did the molecules that allow for those mutations to be there in the first place get to be there so that the mutations could happen, right? How could they just get there?
I'm not sure it's that. I think it's mutation of new traits rather than like the mutation of, some people are taller and shorter, and if we become, if humans become cave-dwelling people, Dan and his progeny are screwed because he's tall. And so eventually some of them might be shorter and shorter because then they wouldn't hit their heads as much.
Move to big caves.
Well, yes, and then there would be a population of people that live in taller caves, and they might be taller, and a population of people that live in shorter caves that might be shorter. And so the selecting between more tall and less tall, I think, is a concept, at least as far as I'm reading what you're saying, Mark, that you can say, okay, I can see how that happened. But the concept of, having echolocation arising isn't necessarily one that you can accept, although that's a modification of...
Yeah, I think we've got examples of modern-day evolution, which you pointed out when I called last time. And I'm not arguing against anything that science has shown. I just don't think science has shown how these new traits arise. Because I think natural selection selects traits that are in existence, but it doesn't produce the new traits that we're selecting against.
If you... I understand. I think that I'm mostly got the gist of what you're saying, and I think that I understand it. What your point is sufficiently now, which is that evolving a new trait. So, for example, going from a one-cell organism to an organism with flagella. Right. Before then, there wasn't anything like a flagella, and then after a period of time, there was. The random mutations that occur. Oftentimes, they're terrible, right? And they result in... Well, actually, most of them are irrelevant and don't change anything and can't be selected for or against by evolution because they don't affect the success of an individual in a species, individual's, prolificness, if you will. Some of them are harmful, right? If you develop a mutation where you randomly die if something sudden happens, that mutation is going to be selected out of the population by natural selection, because if you die before you can have too many children, you have fewer children, or a creature has fewer children. You know the general process of evolution. But in terms of small and random changes, right, of new traits, those occur somewhat, right? Like there's, even in humans, there's, I guess people born with quasi-third arms and that sort of thing, or other parts in that. And there's research out there, I think. Mark, do you use Reddit at all?
I've heard you mention Reddit, and I've been on there once or twice, but really haven't had a chance to engage it. But it seems like a useful resource that I intend to use more in the future.
So what I was going to say is Talk Heathen has a Reddit, r/Talk Heathen, and I think at this point, basically, the conversation can't really progress without specific citations, and I'm not an encyclopedia, so I can't provide them.
I'll give one specific recommendation as well, Mark. If you like YouTube stuff and you like watching creationist stuff, there's a guy I know on YouTube named Paul Ogia, who is a former fundamentalist Christian who actually covers Ken Ham and his kind of Week in Genesis news thing that he does every week.
Yeah.
He actually covers that every week, and he kind of breaks down why some of that stuff is kind of misleading or wrong. And he talks about creationism and just Bible stuff in general. He's a great channel that I'd recommend to check out as well.
Hi, Paul.
What's his name?
His name's Paul Ogia. It's like apologist almost, except his name is Paul, so it's Paul Ogia, right? Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But I don't consider Ken Ham any kind of an authority.
That's good. Yes.
Bill Nye.
Yeah, Bill Nye.
I stay away. I stay away from creationists because every now and then I'll listen to one of them, but then I'll always go back to the sciences. My philosophy is to don't counteract good science, but look where science has gaps. And then try not to argue too much from incredulity, which you nailed me on last time. But I'm just looking for the truth like everybody else, and I encourage what you all do. My daughter texted me about a year ago and asked me what I thought of evolution because, she's being raised to go to church, and she's a good girl. She's 14.
I'm sorry to hear
that. I said, you got to look at evolution. You need to learn evolution and then make your own decision. So I encourage open-mindedness in my children.
Well, that's good.
That's wonderful.
All right, so Mark, we're gonna move on to
Yeah, Mark, just keep having conversations with people, man. That's the best thing you can do, right? Yeah. That's the best thing we can all do.
So we're gonna move on to the next call now. But thank you for calling in, Mark, and I hope that you find a link to the book that I referenced in the show notes. We'll have a link to Paul Gia. Someone will put it in the comments on this, and then also Reddit/r/talkheathen. Is going to be a good resource, but hopefully we'll keep in touch. All right, I think that was a good one.
Yes.
I think I didn't get back to pure randomness doesn't describe evolution as much as I would have liked, but I don't know. Any last thoughts?
Well, it's like I said, I never grew up with the young Earth creationist mindset. I've told this story before on Truth Wanted, but I always grew up with dinosaur books and them saying, 60 million or however many million years ago, all this stuff is happening. 65. Thank you. That's the number I was looking for. I remember the first time I ever encountered like a Christian young Earth creationism was it was late night, and it was like the 700 Club or something was on, and somebody was talking about the book of Job, and they were describing the Leviathan, and then somebody showed a picture of like a dinosaur and was like, see, look, this description in Job is kind of like this dinosaur thing. And I remember asking my dad the next day, I was like, hey, is that kind of true? He's like, well, some people kind of believe that, but like it's
they're wrong, son.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how like I'm not predisposed to have a belief in young Earth creationism because I never grew up around that, right? Like when I hear it now, like a lot of those arguments sound silly, but I can definitely see how if you grew up in kind of that world, it kind of makes more sense, especially if you weren't as knowledgeable about evolution. I mean, Lord knows I wasn't when I was a kid either, But,
who knows? That's the your Christian upbringing has stuck with you more.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's a good summary. It's always good to remember that from a different perspective, arguments that aren't persuasive now can be persuasive then. Yeah. All right, so the next call we're going to take is Anna in Florida. Anna, you are on with Jamie and Dan, and it says here that you are an atheist, but you also want to talk about intelligent design.
Hello.
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 Hi, how are you guys?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us what you wanted to talk to us about.
So I want to talk with you guys about how we atheists discuss intelligent design. And also, I just really liked the last caller, and I would like to comment on something that they said.
Go for it.
They mentioned beneficial mutation and how we don't see beneficial mutation happen, and therefore, we see mutation, but we don't see any beneficial mutation added to the genome. And I think that when we look at what is beneficial, that's actually a matter of hindsight. So we can only tell when something is beneficial after the species that had a mutation evolved and adapted to the new environment, and then we can look back and say, oh yeah, that's a beneficial mutation. Because, for example, if you see a mouse born with a shorter tail, you can't tell whether that's beneficial or not, and but it might be. So for you, it just looks like a mutation. Yeah. But if they actually thrive, and more mice are born with shorter tails as a consequence, you look back and you say that's the beneficial mutation. But we can't determine that in advance.
Whether the mutation is beneficial depends on the environment largely. So if having a shorter tail means that tail is less likely to be snagged by a cat, then probably that would be a beneficial mutation.
Yeah. Being really tall means I could dunk on Jamie on the court. But if I go to a cave, I mean, he's right. It is a little bit harder for me. So it's all contextual.
Being tall means that theoretically you should be able to dunk on me on a court. So you have no excuse. So,
have you even played basketball?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Me?
I'm much better. I'm much better now that I'm 6'1" than I was when I was a child.
I'm a skeptic. I'm going to need some evidence for that, Jamie.
Oh, God. Because now we're going to have to release a video of basketball. So, Anna, what did you want to talk about specifically other than the previous caller as far as how atheists talk about?
Yeah, so I wanted to talk about how we view intelligent design. And because I listen to your show quite a bit, and it seems
like and
that
subscribe.
Most of your callers, it's a great show. And Dan as well, you both have great shows.
Thank you.
You were just the best caller today. This is amazing. Call back every week.
I will. I have some great ideas, but anyway, let's. Because mine is a little, I guess it's a little bit complicated to explain. So. Basically, what I hear a lot is theist callers. A big chunk of them is convinced in the existence of God based on the theological argument, which is things appear designed, and therefore they have to have a designer. And the reason they bring up that argument is because, they see complexity. Things seems to work together really well in nature, and because we are, pattern-seeking species and we design things, we look at that and we go, that must be designed because we design things and they are also very complex and they work. So if nature is complex and it works, then there has to be a designer, right? But the thing is that whatever example the theist callers usually bring up, which is something like a car or a watch or a painter who painted a painting, all these examples they can actually be used to prove the process of evolution. Because if you, for example, take a car and you say, oh, that seems like an intelligent design. It has all these parts and it works so great together. It must have a designer. But then if you really think about it, who designed the car? Who is the designer of the car? And what car are you talking about? Are you talking about the latest model? Or are you talking about a car 50 years ago or when the engine was invented? I mean, every stage of the car has been, it's a process of evolution that keeps the design, it keeps improving, it keeps itself evolving.
Yeah.
And so like if you look at a car today, and you ask, okay, someone designed it, well, who? I mean, you're seeing the design and it's done, but at every stage of that design throughout its history, it's been a complete design. And it's adapted to the environment, which is our preference. And there has been a lot of designs that's been discarded through a process of selection.
Sure.
So,
So there's...
it's kind of...
It's funny because what you're giving is another example. Sorry for cutting you off. Of
No.
a kind of selection process that's is sort of parallel to the way that biological natural selection occurs, which I think is a good tool for explaining how evolution works. I'm not sure that it would convince someone that evolution wasn't a guided process, given that the development of automobiles kind of the steps along the way were guided, which I think is probably where the previous caller Mark falls is, so just like a car, God decided, that there would be convertibles now, and then that worked.
Yeah, and one big difference between the kind of two metaphors we're talking about here is cars, at least until Elon Musk does anything about it, at least, do not like sexually reproduce, right? And sexual reproduction is the kind of main mechanism by which most organisms on Earth, I mean, at least the macro level organisms on Earth, are reproducing with each other, right? And we can actually see where these genes are coming from and where these things are mutating. If we're looking at parents comparing them to offsprings, we can check to see not only where the other genes are coming from, but where the changes are happening. And so, like, just that on its own, to me, is an explanation for a lot of things. If we're going to add on to that explanation and say, oh, yes, this thing happens, but also things are designed sometimes, like kind of like what Mark was saying, then the problem with me is I don't have a clear enough criteria to define when the change is happening through natural selection and when the design is happening. And if the natural selection process is a part of the design, I mean, then you're kind of going in circles at that point a little bit.
You
right?
get to the point where you have an unfalsifiable proposition, which is whatever happens, that was what was designed to happen.
Well, you also mentioned that in the process of design that humans go through, engage in, is guided. But I think that a lot of times what happens, which is kind of analogous to random mutation, is we can stumble on a breakthrough in technology, and and sometimes it could be something that we build, and it turns out to be not a great design, and through process of selection that is kind of analogous to the process of selection in evolution, we discard the design, or it goes extinct in a way. And it's not just in cars. That happens in almost every aspect of life. You have religions evolve, languages evolve. Everything goes through this process, and we don't always have a guided approach to it. Like, there's no ultimate model of a car that we're looking forward to. We just kind of, try things, and if they work, they stay. And that is kind of how also the biological evolution works, where things, random mutation can be beneficial, and if the organism uses that to survive and thrive, that trait later becomes like a common trait amongst the whole species. The same way that, for example, if we keep using the car analogy, is how all cars have four wheels. That comes from a carriage, and that's a trait that we haven't discarded because it worked, for this particular aspect of technology. But really, the point is that everything that we give as an example for design, including design itself, goes through the process of evolution.
And the development of technology. So let me say this. Hey, Anna, do you use Reddit at all? Because I think there's a Reddit that's going to need your explanations here pretty soon in the future.
Okay. Yes, I don't use Reddit, but I'm aware of it, so I can definitely go there.
Well, you should come and join the Talk Heathen one, because something tells me they're going to be talking about, we are going to be talking about intelligent design quite a bit. But I think we're going to move on to the next call now. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking my call.
Oh, of course. Yeah. And
All right.
call back. Bye, Hannah. Yeah, I was gonna say that the wheels one also works as an analogy because it hasn't produced the optimum design, because my understanding is that having spherical wheels would be a better design, but we don't develop that because there's no selection pressure too.
That's interesting. I never thought about spherical wheels.
Neither did I until some science fiction writers wrote it in a thing, and I went, oh, that's sort of interesting.
Huh.
And that's how a lot of my thoughts on things like that go. I go, oh, that's interesting, and then I move on.
And you move on.
To the next thing, which in this case is going to be Kyle in Wales. How are you doing? Repeat caller from, I think it was 3 weeks ago. Kyle?
Hello?
Hey, Kyle, how are you?
I'm not too bad. It's not Kyle. If you remember me from a couple of weeks ago, it's Carl. We had a conversation.
Sorry, I remembered your call.
I'm not going to talk about the V word.
Okay. But you wanted to talk about God, basically. Which we touched on
I'm looking for some help.
Okay, yeah. How can we help?
Oh, sorry. It's the delay. I do apologize if I keep sounding like I'm speaking over you. I do apologize. Apology is really my main thing I want to speak to you about, because I looked back over the footage last week and I realized how much of a prat I was a little bit towards the end and how obnoxious I was getting. So I want to apologize. I did want to apologize to Eric as well, but he's not here today. Dan, I'm a big fan of yours, my friend. Massive fan of yours. I don't want to steal any glory from Anna, but I'm a massive fan of both shows as well. And I do want to talk about God, but I mainly just want to ask you guys some questions, because I am, from the last phone call, I am looking into everything you talked to me about, trying to wrap my brains around some things, and I'm hitting a few roadblocks. Would it be okay to ask you both some questions about God?
Well, I think that's probably going to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted permission first. So I'm stuck on a few things. One is mainly the definition of God. Could I ask you guys what your definition of God is?
I don't have one.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of an interesting question to ask us, actually, because we haven't exactly been presented with a God definition that, I mean, it'd
be sort of like, can you define the characteristics of the antagonist? And I'd be like, okay, well, in what book? Can you define what a God is?
Yeah.
In what religion?
Just the word God. Just the word God.
God is an English word that is used in the singular generally to refer to a divine creator being that is maximally powerful, at least in my personal experience.
I would say God, usually in at least the United States, is usually referred to Yahweh, which is a specific deity within the Jewish.
Just 1 second. Excuse me, I can't hear the shut up. Sorry, it's somebody talking in the background.
Sure.
Told him to shut up.
Yeah, other
sorry,
people,
can you repeat
quiet.
what the last bit?
Yeah, I was just saying, when I hear God, usually it's within the context of the Judaism and Christianity, and that it's a specific deity referred to as colloquially as Yahweh in some places,
or Jesus,
or right.
You guys look at the subjective term of God, yeah.
The subjective term?
The subjective definition.
That's kind of how all words work, generally.
Yeah.
All right, but I see what you're saying. I was just looking for a word of God that would sort of sum them up. I have one. Can I give you what I wrote it down based on a couple of comments that I was looking outside of the dictionaries, because the dictionary has a load of definitions, and it's like, okay, when I rang last time, they were trying to talk about different definitions of God, but which wasn't my definition of God. I mean, there's some in there that I do agree with and comes along the line. But can I just give you a definition and tell me what you think of this definition of God?
Okay,
sure. Is this the definition of a God you believe in? Or
it is a definition. My God has a different definition, but let me read it out and then see what you think, and maybe you can help me see what I'm going wrong. Yeah. So God, a descriptive term given to a being, entity, or object with which characteristics represent great power and or influence to the satisfaction of the believer.
So there's that in the modern era that probably satisfies most ideas about God in the English-speaking world, at least as far as I'm aware of them. Because there's people that believe in gods that aren't super powerful, but
don't satisfy really anything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be all right. in a loose way, that would be my objective terminology of a God.
Well,
God is a descriptive word that we give to something, like I said, a being, entity, or object, in which the characteristics represent great power and or influence to the satisfaction of the believer. So it sort of like embodies everybody's sort of like belief in what a God is.
I think that's a broad way of describing the usage of the word God that probably does satisfy most of the people that you would talk to, at least in the English-speaking world, about God. I'm not sure that that any individual subject can provide an objective definition of a word, because I don't think they.
I understand and agree. But what I'm saying is, if I was to try and use a word to describe God to someone that had all these different, didn't know God and had all these different terminologies of God, and was thinking, wait a minute, which one is God? And I say, well, we don't know. But if God is just a word that we use to describe something. Because I'm met with this one argument when as you know from last week, I said, I class the sun as my God. Got my reasons for it. It fits my definition of what a God is. Which is the most powerful. The most powerful object being whatever you want to call it. There's some argument on that, of course, but it's the most powerful thing in our system. And as far as I'm aware, and as far as knowledge that I'm aware of, it is without it, life as we know it wouldn't exist. It was there at the beginning of life as we know it, and would more likely be there at the end of life as we know it, but I can't know that.
Sure.
I believe, based on the information I've researched, that the sun is responsible for life as we know it on this planet.
Responsible is an interesting word, but I would agree to the word necessary.
Okay, yes. So what I'm saying is, even though I believe in evolution and things, we needed obviously the heat and the light, and obviously for
and
plants
radiation.
and oxygen.
Yeah.
We needed all that stuff for it first. I mean, I still believe there's lots of things in religion, such as Christianity and and these other religions that lead me to believe that all these religions started off with the base idea. But I can't prove that. I just believe it because I've read it, and most of it doesn't make sense. I don't believe fully in the Bible.
So hold on here real quick, Kyle, because you've hit on a couple of things. So one, there's my understanding is that there's a lot of particularly early religions that began based around a worship of at least in part, the sun, or there was a sun god, right? Assigning an anthropomorphized mystical being to various.
You can continue, but I also believe other religions today, like Christianity, it was also started off there. But like I said, it's just a belief on my.
Possibly.
And I read the Bible.
Yeah, which is probably impossible for the people that are annoyed at home. Because bring on the comments and the emails. President at hit me with it. Or Jamie at will be up probably later this afternoon. But what my question is sort of, so we touched on the God that you believe in sort of briefly last week before we got off on other topics, which is you were saying that the sun satisfies your definition of a God, like the star soul at the center of our system. So can you? Because that doesn't, I don't think, satisfy necessarily the definition that's broad that you gave us at the beginning of this call. Can you tell us what your definition of a God is?
Well, my definition of a God, on, like I said, the broad sense is what I described. A powerful being and the object. Okay. The characteristics representing great power, influence, satisfaction of the believer. But my personal definition, that some people believe in omnipresent and things like that. To me, it's a crazy notion, but like I said, it's my personal belief on that. From my definition of God that I give, I decided that I needed to give a definition to form an opinion. That's just something I believe. I believe everybody should, but I'd like to touch on that in a moment. But so I decided, right, and so what was my definition of God? And so I said, right, and it has to be a powerful, much more powerful than me, something I can't fathom. Like the sun fitted that. I didn't straight go to the sun. I wasn't trying to fit to the sun. I had this.
I'm really curious because I'm wondering why you have a different definition for your personal belief in God, and then a different definition for God that you're using for other things. Like, for example, and this is just a curiosity to me, because when I think of a car, for example, I don't know, I don't say in one sense, a car is, a thing that has an engine in it that goes vroom, and then I have a personal definition that says, well, it's this really cool speedy thing. I don't know. Like, to me, it seems like I would just use the definition of car that everybody else uses. Why do you feel the need to have two different definitions of God to work with? Why not just use the ones that...
I don't.
Okay.
I don't ever need to. All I was doing was I was trying to find a definition that sums up everybody's sort of description of what a God is in one, just to be fair and understanding.
Can broadly
it'll lead on
yeah.
to... I probably said it to lead on to the next part that I'll get into in a moment. It's just to finish what I was saying. The Son fits all my definitions of what a God would be. So to me, it's a God. I mean, it's powerful. I need it to sustain it. So what I'm saying is, this isn't your definition of a God. Yeah,
Okay.
that wouldn't.
Yeah, but
fit
we're talking about your
because you don't-
definition, right? Because we don't necessarily, or at least I don't necessarily have one.
I'm not even sure that you can have one definition that describes every form possible of what people have called God. I've heard people say...
but
that's what I'm saying. I know you can't.
Yeah.
I know you can't. What I was trying to do was just, say
Get
that...
as close as possible.
Get as close as... Yeah, you've got to hit the nail on the head. You get as close as possible.
I've gotten as close as possible to describing your goal of getting as close as possible.
There you go.
To having a definition that's as close as possible to describing everyone's definition of God. So my question is, are there other things that meet your definition of a God?
Other than being powerful?
Other than the star soul, right? The sun. What else is a God, if anything, in your mind?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
Do you believe in any other gods besides the sun?
Not for me, no. Nothing else.
Okay.
It's my definition.
So is that in part, just as a quick side question, do you believe that there can only be one?
No.
Oh, okay, cool. So it's not a...
the truthful answer is I don't know.
Situation. Okay, that's cool. So when you say that the sun is powerful, do you believe that the sun has agency? Like, can the sun make a decision about what it does?
I don't know.
Okay. Wait, so is it...
He's not coming to talk about the sun, right? He's coming to talk to us about his definition of God and whether we think it's...
Well, he believes that the sun... he describes the sun as a god. So I'm wondering what effect this has in terms of... Like, is there a part of this that plays into a religion? Do you have...
He's saying that people use the definition. The definition could be possible to use the sun as...
No, he describes the sun as God.
No, but...
I do describe the God. I do believe the sun is my God as well, because it fits my definition. The whole purpose of this is... I want to get to the point. And the thing I'm stuck with is, for me, you would like me to prove a God to, yes? You'd like to prove a God.
I'd like to...
anybody call this.
I believe in the existence of the sun. I'm just now curious about why you describe it that way.
All right, could I finish what I was talking about first?
Yes,
and then we go back to that, because it's stuck repeating in my head and I can't concentrate on...
Mm-hmm.
I have a slight form of autism. Right, so what I'd like to know is, how can you prove a God or give evidence for God to somebody who doesn't have a definition of what God is? It's unprovable to you.
Which God?
You don't even have a definition.
So it's sort of like saying, how can I give, if your question is, how can you demonstrate the truth of a proposition when there isn't a proposition? The answer is you can't. But if your question is, how can I demonstrate the existence of X, then it depends on what X is and you can provide evidence for it. The fact that I don't have one idea of what a God is doesn't prevent people from coming to me and trying to give evidence for Jesus or Ra or Thor, even if you don't use a specific word that there isn't a single specific definition for in the English-speaking world. So I don't want to get too caught up on the word God rather than the concepts that are...
What does the word atheism mean then? Because I'm stuck on that.
It means
from what you just said.
So the word atheist is derived from Greek, right? So it means lack of a belief in a god or gods, right? So I've run into this before. There was a caller that was saying that pagans believe trees are God. You believe in trees, therefore you believe in a god, right? And I still describe myself as an atheist. One, because I am unaware of any pagans that describe trees as a god, but you believe that the sun is a god, right? Like that it is your God, I think is the phrase that you used, and I believe that it exists, and I would still call myself an atheist because the word atheist is derived from a, without, and theist, which relates to a theology.
Well,
so I don't have a
I do
belief that's
understand-
based on any sort of theology. So when you ask me what atheist means, it means that I don't have a belief specifically, in a God or gods, but in a broader context, in anything that would qualify as a theology.
Okay, but you mentioned about trees, and I get your point on trees.
We should look at them.
I think, well, yeah, of course, I get your point on trees. I mean, it's a tree. You get breath and all that, but obviously the tree has a next step up that we can understand. For example, a tree wouldn't be there without the sun or other elements that are needed to grow a tree.
Sure.
So the next step up from that would be there. I don't know the next step up from a sun. I understand how a sun is created and born,
a galaxy,
but I don't. Yeah, but as I'm saying, I don't understand it. I have no understanding of where it came from. How, that sort of thing. I don't. So my knowledge stops there. So I can't believe in something beyond that. So where the sun is the end of it for me. So that then constitutes something powerful that we rely on. That, is the creator of everything.
So that
would fall into the category. I haven't finished talking yet, my friend.
All right.
I don't mean to be rude. I didn't mean that to sound rude. I know that sounded rude. I didn't mean that. I just meant that I would like to finish what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Here. Come down to it.
So carrying on with that, that fits all the realms of what a God be. A powerful being. It's the creator of life as we know it. It sustains life as we know it. I still haven't finished. And then, it's been here since the beginning of time. It'll be...
so now I have to jump in because you've thrown the word being in there, which wasn't there before. But also, I don't see it as most powerful because there are larger, stronger stars.
What it really meant was...
Hal, do you know that there are bigger stars?
I've viewed the bigger stars, yes.
Yeah. So those are more powerful than the one at the center of our universe.
But
our solar system.
They have no part play, as far as I'm aware, in the creation of our species, the creation of our world.
So to be clear to you, it's not just about maximally great or super strong. No. Sorry, I've forgotten the specific language. It revolves specifically around our species. Is the way you use the word God.
It's easy to sit there and say for someone who can't prove like their terminology of God. I think things like Christians and all that were duped. That's my personal belief. I believe they were duped into believing in something that can't be proved.
But this doesn't relate to the sun.
Say something like, you can't prove that God. As far as I'm aware, and as far as you're aware, no one's ever proved.
Well, so hold on, Carl, hold on, because this is a separate subject entirely. I don't think that you just.
I don't understand how it's a separate subject.
So I don't think that you describe yourself as a Christian, given that you don't describe Christ as God.
I do believe in the teachers of Yeshua, but
So I'm interested in talking about what you believe in terms of a God. So you specifically, because there isn't a Christian in this conversation to talk about what they believe. So in terms of you not understanding about something that is, quote, more powerful than the sun is formed through one of the four...
system. I did say in our system.
Yeah, in our system. So gravity.
Being in our system.
Gravity is the only reason that the sun or the earth or is one of the four reasons that anything that we would call existent can exist at all. So wouldn't that be a God?
I looked into gravity, and
it's a good thing to look into.
I didn't understand it enough, and the people I was looking into said they didn't fully understand gravity either. And there's so many people saying different things, and it gets confusing. So I find it difficult to go there. I understand what I understand from the world and from what I know about the sun and everything. Like I said, my descriptors. Gravity didn't fit in there. I can't remember where it didn't fit in. You put me on the spot, and I will look into that, and I'll get an answer for you maybe in a month or two time if you allow me to call back. I will look into it just like I did before. So yeah, you raise a point, and I will look into that because, like I said, I'm not a theist in the regular terms where I'm stubborn in my beliefs, just like Mark was before. I'm open to questions. I'm open to change. I will change my beliefs if someone proves me something different or wrong. The only thing I don't understand is how to go about proving something to somebody who has no definition on it. I mean, I at least
So,
hope you'd have a definition.
The short answer is, Kyle, you have to give us the definition.
Yeah.
Give us the definition, and we'll work with you, man, and we'll tell you yes or no whether we think that's true.
So I think that
okay. So like I said, the definition I gave him then was the most powerful, I use the word being, but know what I mean by being is it's just because I can't feel the word. The object being,
thing.
whatever.
You can use the word thing.
Thing. Yeah, okay. I'll use the word thing. Thank you, Jimmy. So the most powerful thing in the system, as I know it, is the sun. I don't know anything more powerful, and
okay.
the things that people may suggest are more powerful, I don't fully understand yet.
So all right. So let me ask a question real quick, because is the word God refer to something that is objectively God? Because you've included in your definition, or at least implicitly, it's necessary for you to understand it.
Well, it's necessary for anybody to understand anything they believe in. Otherwise,
no. It's necessary for you to. So you, right? So
if you don't understand it, how can you believe in it? That sounds ridiculous.
You can believe in the existence of a thing up to the level of your understanding, but if you don't believe that, if you do not understand how gravity is necessarily, as you've said, a level up, when you're talking about trees to the sun, then a star. Yes, but then why isn't it a god?
Why is gravity not a god?
Yeah.
Because I thought
it created the sun.
Gravity is formed by mass, yeah?
Gravity is a property that affects mass.
Oh, yeah, but I'm saying you're saying gravity created the sun, but I think there's many elements that created the sun, and I'm not talking about what the sun's created is. I'm talking about the sun created us. What created the sun and everything would be something I don't fully understand, and all right, you can go back, but I can't because I don't understand it. And not many people do. We're still pushing those boundaries at the moment, I believe.
Yeah, so hold on, Carl. My question is, in terms of what you call a god, why do you stop at the sun rather than assign the word God to something that you can understand at least formed the sun, but not fully understand? Gravity is more powerful than the sun in the terms that you've given. Why don't you call it a god rather than the sun?
Okay, I'll get to it in a brief way. Gravity, along with other things like nebulas and elements and things that have formed the sun. Yes.
Well, no. All of the other things you've just described are the result as well of gravity, or at least the four fundamental forces of our universe.
So what is gravity?
So gravity is a property of mass. Is a property of the universe that affects mass.
Affects. Like I said, I don't understand it.
It's the force of attraction between objects based on their mass.
So objects are needed to create gravity. Yes.
No.
So without no objects, could there be gravity?
I believe so, because I think it's a property of space, but
but
I believe that we might now be bumping up on the limits of understanding based on cosmology.
You keep using the word believe. Do you know or believe? Which one?
Define know in terms of level of confidence, because my level of confidence at this point is low as far as whether the property mass is a property of space or purely of matter. I believe actually. I think the case can strongly be made that it is a property of space, given research into dark matter. However, at that point, we are at the very, very edge of my understanding, and we still haven't gotten to the point, which is why is the word.
Why are we talking about it? What I'm saying is, why are we talking about it if you don't understand it?
Okay, understanding is not binary. When you name, you should care because it answers your question.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. So let me walk you through how it answers your question.
You're telling me that
let me walk you through and explain how it answers your question, which is this level of debate is not really Dan's favorite thing. So sorry, and eventually we'll move on to the next one. But let me walk you through how what I mean when I say understanding is not binary. Explains your question. In the same way that I can't say I understand math.
Yeah, Jimmy, I didn't say that. You just accused me of saying
all right.
that.
So then that is what I was trying to say. When I said understanding is not binary, what is it that you were asking? Because you said, why are we talking about it if you don't understand it, is the words that I was responding to.
Yes.
Is there some other set of words you wanted me to respond to?
I don't understand what you mean when you say understanding is not binary. Could you explain that to me?
Yes, I can. So I have what I would describe as an understanding of math, and I also have a complete inability to do integral calculus. Mm-hmm. Is it false for me to say that I understand math?
I don't know.
Right, because the word understand, when it's applied that way, is applied broadly and not in the specific sense. So saying, do you understand gravity? Like, I mean, I can say yes, but I think that Neil deGrasse Tyson has a better understanding of it than I do. And if we can refer to better or worse understanding of something, then it's not yes or no.
Yeah,
right?
I think the question that was led into, if we look at the context of it, was I was asking, do you need something for gravity? Because you said gravity is between objects of mass, yes?
Yeah.
And I said, if there's no objects of mass, then could it be gravity? You said, yes, I believe so. And I asked, what do you mean by believe so?
I don't know. I would start with maybe not. I think probably, because there's probably something with the effect of dark matter. However, that sounds like the beginning of a fantastic set of questions that I'm going to Google in order to learn more about physics.
Okay, well, that's enough. I think you've given me a question or two to look at. And
okay, so I'd like to get back to why you call the Son a God and what role that plays in your life.
Well, it plays a role in my life in terminology of, I understand that is, the creator. I don't believe it's the creator of the building blocks I believe.
Yeah, that it's necessary for the existence of life.
But it's necessary for the existence of life.
Do you pray to the sun? Like, what form does it play in your regular life?
It's more of a respect thing than anything. It's more of a respect than anything for it. I don't think a God has to be prayed to or anything like that. And I don't know.
Is this a part of any religion, personal or otherwise?
It's been part of loads of previous religions, yes, but recently.
So I'm getting promptings from my producer to sort of move on with this call. I think that, as I've suggested to other callers, that we could move this discussion to Reddit, and I think that if you call back, when Eric is hosting as well, that he'll probably have some thoughts that are slightly different than mine. Thank you for calling in, Carl. I think this was a good discussion. And,
well, what I do is in the next call, I'll ask the question I asked last time. So
no, you're good. Is it possible for us to find you on the Reddit? Can you come to the Talk Heathen Reddit and we'll have the discussion there? Or even the ACA Discord would probably be a good place as well.
I would love to. I prefer to do it like this. I wouldn't mind ringing back.
Right. There's no reason why you can't do both. I'll ask you to consider maybe going on those, and I'm sure that Eric will take your call around the corner. But I really got to move on. We're short on time.
Okay. Could I just ask you permission for one thing? It's not do talk. As in, I would like to make a piece on this. Use this footage just between us, just to talk over and make another YouTube thing. Would you guys be okay with that? Me doing that?
So the content of Talk Heathen is owned by the Atheist Community of Austin and retains those rights. All rights reserved, I believe. So certainly fair use is a thing. Yeah. But
I still like to ask you permission. You personally.
I can't give you that permission.
You're okay with it.
But yeah.
Okay, you can't give your own permission, then that's fair enough. But
all right, so I'll talk to you in future. Thanks for calling in, Carl. So that's cool. Let's see. Do you want to take 3 or 4? Because I feel like I've been, or 2 or 6.
I want to do 3.
All right, let's take 3 because I feel like I've been kind of steamrolling over that last one. So Grayson in Arkansas, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. I just got through the last call, so here we are. It says here that you wanted to... So continue. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I was going to point out that it says here that you lost your faith and dropped out of seminary and want resources, but I didn't want to cut you off from what you were saying.
No, I appreciate that. You're good. I had 2 questions I wanted to ask, but if we're short on time after the first one, we can just end it there. But I was in undergrad school, went to seminary, studied Bible and ministry in undergrad at a Church of Christ school, and then ended up moving on to a seminary in Nashville. dropped out of it at about 5 or 6 months ago. And that has sort of been a part of the gradual process of eventually deconverting and losing any belief in a God.
Congratulations. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a good thing. People around Arkansas might disagree.
Well, some. Yeah. Well, a lot.
Some, sure.
There'll also be a lot that think it's good. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's some good people around here. But yeah, I've gotten in contact with a couple of different organizations like Recovery from Religion, which has provided me a lot of really great resources in terms of forming communities around skepticism and other sort of non-religious persons and things of that nature. But I'm also just trying to find good resources for sort of reconstructing a worldview based around non-belief, since theism has informed so many of my convictions and things of that nature in the past. I'm having to do a lot of work to get caught up again.
Right.
So yeah, that was my first question, is just what would you guys recommend as far as like, hey, here's your starter kit. This is what you should pick up first.
I would advise looking into humanism and scientific skepticism.
Also, have you heard of the Clergy Project?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. I've gotten an invite to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I currently work at a church, actually.
Yeah, so for those who aren't aware, the Clergy Project is an organization that helps. It does a lot of things. Part of the things they do is help retrain people who have worked in church or other kind of religious organizations and stuff, who have been doing that most of their lives. Like that's kind of their skill sets, and they want to do something else, and they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to leave their community. So definitely, I'd recommend that to you, Grayson, and also anybody else who's watching that, who's watching this, who wants to get in touch with those guys. They're a great organization. But Grayson, I feel with this a little bit because when I was leaving my community, I mean, before I found the Atheist Community of Austin, I was involved in several religious communities. I was involved in an evangelical college ministry. I had been a really long time member of a Christian camp that I had worked for a number of years. And that was really hard for me, because my friend groups, my personal life narrative, like everything about me was kind of surrounded by the church and by Christianity and by religion in general. And right. I found peace and solace in a couple of different ways. Part of it was kind of reconstructing my own kind of life purpose and my own narrative. I sincerely thought that I was a tool for God to be used, at His will, and to do His purpose and stuff. And so trying to leave that and trying to figure out, well, now you can just kind of do what you want. It's like, well, what do I do? Like, I've never done this before. Right. And that's really tough, man. I'd say the first thing I would highly recommend is, if you haven't already, find a local atheist group or just a local group that you can talk to about what you're going through right now. Because I imagine, you have a pretty unique experience that's hard to relate to with most people, right? Not many people go to seminary school. Not many people have lived that life and try to work for the clergy and stuff like that. And, finding people to talk to is always, number one. Got to do that. I could list podcasts and books that I've found to be interesting and stuff as well. But as Jamie said, I really like humanist philosophy in particular. Bart Campolo is a guy who I've talked to personally and had the pleasure to. Science Mike is a guy who emphasizes humanism, who is actually a Christian, but I relate to him in so many other ways. These are particular people that have influenced me, but ultimately it's just going to come down to, finding your own way, finding your own path, and discovering what life ahead of you is going to be. I'm glad that you're here with us now, and I know it's going to be hard, but yeah, just calling into the show, I think is a great first step, and I'm so glad to know that you're doing this, man. I just want to encourage you, keep it up, because it's going to get better, right? Yeah, no, I really appreciate that, guys. That's really cool of you to say. Do you have time for my quick second question, or should I let it go?
I think we do, if I can first say yeah. And if you go to the Talk Heathen Reddit, there will be a post up there that's, resources for the deconverted.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Cool. What's your second question?
My second question has to do with, adjusting from, being in very religious communities and that being sort of, the context for all of my socializing and grouping and all of that, to trying to move into communities built around non-belief and skepticism. Although I understand that the extent of their importance is pretty limited, I've kind of stumbled into more complexity with labeling than I expected around the terms agnostic, atheist, etc. Before, I had this pretty cut and dry understanding of what those terms meant. And I've kind of realized that they're not as fixed across the spectrum with how people use them as I previously thought.
Absolutely.
Yep.
They have a lot more flexibility with them. And so I've heard Matt Dillahunty, and I think you guys have this in your description on the feed, that you define atheism in a way that does tend to overlap with agnosticism, and that is lacking belief in a God, not necessarily a direct affirmation that there is no God, which is different. And so I'm really on board with that definition, but what I'm curious about is what input do you guys have for someone that is looking to approach this diversity of labels and adopt one of them or multiple of them in a way that is helpful? So I understand, like, when it comes to someone else says, hey, I'm an atheist, you don't want to jump to conclusions about what that may or may not necessarily mean. But when it comes to inserting yourself into a particular branding of non-belief, you could say, what's helpful for that? I've even heard some people say I'm a Christian atheist.
Yes.
And things of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? There was a period of time where you might have been able to describe me as a Christian atheist, only in the sense that Christianity was my culture, and it was the metaphor that I used to draw kind of my life experiences from and to relate to other people with. So even though I didn't actually have a belief in God, I did believe in some of the lessons that were being taught in some of these stories. Now, granted, I have a different perspective on some of those stories now, but at the time, it was a place for me to. I was comfortable with myself in doing that because I hadn't fully transitioned from my Christian community to like the atheist community, and I still try to hold ties with both in some respects. But it's going to be a process. At least, don't expect to kind of figure things out in one day. That's my first kind of advice I can give you. The other thing too is, use the words that are most descriptive of what you're going through at the moment, and hold on to those words as loosely as possible, because I went through a couple different labels before I got to where I am now, right? Yeah. And I know it's like you're probably feeling like, well, I want to be able to describe what I'm at with other people right now because this is an exciting new thing. Let me tell you, 99% of the people, at least I've talked to in Arkansas, probably don't know what the word humanist means. And if I tried to explain, it just doesn't mean anything to most people yet, right? And that's a struggle you're gonna probably find for a bit, is that what you're going through is going to be, the experts on this are going to be either limited or just outside of your general locale, right? You're going to have to call into call-in shows in Texas to kind of get advice on this stuff, right? But that's my thing, man. Like, find the metaphors that help describe your life the best. Find the narrative that describes what you are, and like, let the labels come in time. They will come in time, but like, keep digging, keep learning, keep finding other stuff. Don't just talk to atheists. Talk to other people who use different labels and stuff. See if they work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything?
Cool. Well,
no, I think that covers it.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys again so much. Appreciate you taking the call and just letting me share a little bit of where I'm at and getting some really good insight from you guys. Very cool of you.
Yeah. Absolutely, Grayson. Yeah, keep it up, man, and good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you got it. Already subscribed.
Done. Grayson, my man, thanks for calling. All right. I've just realized that we're very short on time, but also that I haven't brought up anything about the Pumpkin Posse or how the new Independent Fundamentalist Baptist Church is basically a hate group but not called that, and that they're terrible, and that if you don't know the things I'm referring to, you can Google them. I think Mr. Atheist of Dear Mr. Atheist has a good video explaining it, as well as...
He has a video that I'm in.
Yeah, he has a video that Dan is in, and therefore it's currently this show's favorite. Sorry that I don't have a bunch of links to it, but or things to rattle off the top of my head, but yeah, it's a group of people coming together and shedding some light on this terrible shit. So
Yeah, that's a whole other topic that
yeah,
we probably
that's
don't
an
have time
entirely different topic that we definitely don't have time for. But I think we have just enough time to start to address the concerns of Sam in California. So Sam, we're gonna start to address your call. We're very short on time, but I think it's good for us to start this conversation and for you to probably end up calling back again next week. How you doing this fine day, my good friend Sam?
Howdy, dudes. I'm great.
Yeah. So it says here that you believe in a creator, but you don't understand why we suffer.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mystery. I just can't figure out. I mean, I believe in the creator. I think, I pray to him too, but somehow I just can't figure out why there's so many people suffering, so many diseases, all these natural disasters. I mean, it doesn't all really add up to me.
Yeah. So if there are natural disasters and diseases and suffering, and you think about that and you go, well, if there's a creator, why would that be? And you can't find a reason, then the first part of the sentence, at least as far as I've phrased it, is if there's a creator, right? So like if there's a creator, if there was a benevolent creator, there wouldn't be suffering and natural disasters and pointless death and disease and violence and all these things. And we look around at the world and there are these things. What does that say about the proposition that there is a benevolent creator?
Well, someone has got to be running the universe, I mean, there's a way all these things work. I mean, the laws of nature, whatever you want to call that, Mother Nature or something. So, I don't know.
Why does somebody have to run the universe?
It's just very confusing. Well, I don't think we human beings are that smart.
What do you mean?
Oh.
I don't think any of us in the world who are really that smart to run the universe. We can't even run ourselves.
I definitely don't think any human beings are running the universe.
We can agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But why is anyone running the universe? What if it was just undirected chaos? Wouldn't that explain why the things that happen in the universe don't seem to care about humans?
Yeah, but then why are we alive? Why are we living this life? What happens when we die? That just all these things, I guess when you believe in something, then you feel that maybe there's hope for all of us. Like Superman,
Yeah, I do know what you mean, but I don't believe that Superman exists, and I do my best to find hope in other places. Right? So if you came across a person that said, well, I don't know how this works, but if you believe in Superman, then you believe that ultimately there will be justice and the Lex Luthors of the world will be opposed. And then they went, therefore we don't have to oppose, Putin or whatever. Wouldn't it be better if they didn't believe that there was a Superman that was going to protect them? Or at least if they had a realistic, conclusion as far as whether or not Clark Kent is Superman. Sorry, I just revealed his secret identity. But yeah, well, I've ruined it now for...
Well, I knew that already.
No, I just mean, if someone said, no, I believe in Superman because it gives me hope, would you find that that's a persuasive reason to believe in Superman?
Well, obviously, Superman only exists in comics, but, something powerful and strong that people believe is saving the world or is running the world. I mean, why are we alive? Why are people born in places that are so poor? Why are people born in deserts? Why are people born in such either rich or poor? What's the discrepancy? Like, who decides these things?
Why does there have to be a reason?
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I'm here to ask you guys.
So let me say it this way. From my perspective, there isn't a person deciding that. I don't believe that there's a person deciding that at all. I think that that's a thing that happens.
Yeah, but then what could be the cause of all of this chaos, like you mentioned? Like why is there such a big gap?
Economically,
people like look at California. It's one of the most expensive states in America, and then there's other places in the state that are not as rich. I mean,
So there's ways
in the United
of
States,
explaining
there's so much-
economic disparity in terms of economic theory, right? So if a person makes $200,000 a year, they're going to have more money at the end of the year than a person that makes $50,000 a year.
Yeah, humans have created
Assuming they spend it well. Yeah.
humans have created economic systems, and
Yeah.
the result of these economic systems puts some people at, you know, in disparity and some people in wealth.
Yeah. And there's elements that play into that are random, right? Like a person who is born in sub-Saharan Africa has a different, level of economic potential statistically. Depending on where they're born in sub-Saharan Africa, it's not all the same. But
point is, we don't really have to have a God to kind of explain that necessarily.
Yeah, but that's what I'm trying to figure out with the two of you dudes. You know, like what could be if not God, then who or what? And
here, let me give you a thought, Sam, and then we gotta end the show right here. But let me give you a thought to come away with. Or to take home and then, call back or visit us on any of the social media. Be sure to like and subscribe. But the thought that I want to leave you with before you, call back again next week is if you're trying to figure out what the answer is, right? Why is there economic disparity? Why are there, hurricanes? Why is there disease? You didn't mention the other two, but why these things happen. And you are trying to figure it out and therefore don't know the answer. Why would you conclude that it's God before you know what the answer is? And that's the question I got to leave you with, Sam, because we're running over time. But can I count on you to call back again next week or the week after?
Sure thing, man. Thanks a lot for taking my call. Definitely look into it.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah. Definitely think about why you would draw that conclusion. All right. And with that, before you go and before we take any more calls, etc., I'm going to go ahead and point out that the Atheist Vanguard, the latest of ACA Productions, starts immediately after this show, and you should go check it out. And with that, we'll get some love rings here right as we're about to finish this up. Dan, I have forgotten if you have a specific sign-off for your show.
I always tell people to always keep wanting the truth. Because my show is called Truth Wanted, and you should check it out on YouTube.
Yes.
Like and
after
subscribe.
you switch over to Atheist Vanguard immediately after this, and then wait a little while, and then watch The Atheist Experience, and then go back and watch the entire backlog of every episode of my show, and then after like, subscribe, and comment on a bunch of mine, then go check out Truth Wanted. That's the.
Or are you gonna hold on? Are you gonna let the man tell you what to do?
Yes, because I'm wearing a suit, so I'm in charge.
You gonna let this guy?
I'm in charge of making sure that if you don't believe, you have community here.
No. Truth Wanted. Truth Wanted is
one of the
rebels.
hosts of this show, which means I'm in charge of telling you that if you don't believe, you've got a lot of way to go in terms of persuading people that you do, and that we don't hate you. It's just that you're absolutely wrong about this. Nailed it.
That was way too long.
That's what people say about everything about me. Wink.
Wow. That's
I don't know whether that went live.